it's easy to grow. You grow plants in your home, you grow them in your garden, you grow them out in the yard, wherever. Anybody can grow a plant. When it comes here, this is when, as they say, the rubber meets the road. Because right here is where you either make it or you break it. And it starts first with the loading of the chamber. The steam is working against gravity through pressure. So when the steam comes in the chamber, it's leaving the boiler at 125 pounds per square inch. As it comes through the valve, it's reduced down to less than 5 pounds when it enters the bottom of the chamber. By the time it reaches the surface or the crown of the plant material, it's zero. And that's my objective, is having the plant still at zero pressure. So when the material is put in, there's many things that take place. And that will cause one to lose, fractionate, or destroy the oil. If the plant material is not dispensed in there evenly and compressed and packed evenly, it will create pockets. If they just dump it in, close the lid, because as you see right out here on the deck, that just came in from the trucks. So if they pick that up with the machine, bring it in and drop it, and close the lid, it'll have air pockets in it. So the steam naturally, because it's being pushed against gravity, will go to the course of least resistance. So it'll look for any opening or any air pocket to go to. There's a term that we use called the chimney effect. And it's where the steam finds an opening in the plant material and works through it following that course of least resistance. Once it finds that opening, then naturally it will just draw the rest of the steam from the pressure that first goes in and pull it right into that chimney. When that happens, then it starts engorging the chimney, expanding it, and more steam flows to that chimney. And so it just keeps happening and happening until the process is complete. When it does that, the volume of your steam is going through that chimney, and it's not extracting the oil in the rest of the material. And second, because that steam is now being pushed from a circumference of 7 feet, or a diameter of 7 feet, to a diameter maybe of 2 inches or 1 inch, then the heat intensifies and it burns the oil. We call it scorching the oil. And that will fracture the molecules as well, and it changes the aroma. When that happens, there's only 2 options. One, we take it out here in the gravel and pour it in the gravel and settle the dust. Or we mix it in with other oils, depending, like if it's tansy and we scorch tansy, then we just put that in our farm oils that we spray back on the fields. So we still get some use out of it, but not all of the oil is that, or that portion that we lose it. If we scorch a gallon of tansy oil, that's $60,000. If we scorch a gallon of lavender oil, that's $20,000. If we scorch a gallon of melissa oil, that's $53,000. So we don't have a big turnover of distillery operators because they sign a contract that if they scorch an oil, they buy it. So we have some distillery operators that have worked for 4 years and I haven't paid them yet. I wish. But it's a lot of human error that can result. Now, with that known, let me go to the next part. So I have an operator that doesn't know what he's doing. And he thinks, oh, I just got to open this valve, and you'll see it downstairs, and I've got to get the steam in it. If he opens the valve too fast, because the steam coming from the boiler at 125 pounds is well over 350 degrees. So we reduce the temperature by reducing the pressure. But if he opens the valve and overpressurizes it, we get steam in there of over 300 degrees, it hits that chamber, we get another burning effect. That's one. Two, if we get steam in there at that temperature, then we have it in there at greater than 20 pounds of pressure, and it floods the chamber. And if it floods the chamber, it'll blow right through there and take the plant material and shove it down that swan neck and plug the condenser. And then, if the condenser's plugged, and if that doesn't pop off, it'll blow. If this has 10 pounds of accumulated pressure in it, it's an atomic bomb. And if it blew, it would level the roof off this building. And unfortunately, years ago, we had an operator who was killed here. Because the policy is if this is cooking and it's leaking steam, then shut it down and don't touch it, just shut the boiler down. And it was leaking steam, and he saw it, and he came over, and his comrades yelled at him and said, "No, don't touch it, we have to shut it down." And he turned the handle and exploded. And so, you know, it was a very painful thing for everybody, needless to say, and certainly the family, but mistakes happen because of people not doing what they're supposed to do and what they were trained to do. And everybody that works in here has to go through a training and a certification to work in the distillery. And because of, and that was, I've had 3 extraction chambers blow up, and it was because of the condenser plugging, because the operator forged the chamber with too much steam. The other thing that happens is the operator charges it with steam and then sets back and falls asleep. The steam is working up through the plant material and it's working against gravity. It has to have enough volume to keep pushing it. So we call that ramping. So every 2 to 3 minutes you open the valve a little bit more, giving it a little bit more steam to keep engorging it, but to keep pushing the steam up through the plant material. If you push it too fast, and then you go, whoops, I gave it too much steam, and you close it back down, and the steam drops, the oil that is coming out now is sitting mid-range with the steam. The operator closed the valve, the steam dropped, and guess what else drops? The oil drops. And the oil will fall right back into the bottom of the extraction chamber, and that's called reflux. When that happens, it is a 100% throwaway. It has no value whatsoever. The third thing that happens is the operator has opened it, he's given it steam, it's going up through, it's saturating the plant material. The molecule pockets are opening and releasing the molecules because at that point it's a gas. It's not a liquid. It's a gas. So that's why it's so fragile. Everything in here is in what's called a gas phase. When it drops back out, when that vapor drops back out in reflux, when it hits the bottom, there's moisture there, and it condenses and turns the liquid into bottom. But as long as it's in the plant material, it's in the gas phase. But when that gas molecule comes out of the fiber and is sitting there suspended with the steam, and the operator forgets to ramp it, or he doesn't ramp it enough to keep it moving upward, the molecules will sit there, and if the temperature changes 1 degree less, the molecules will migrate back into the fiber of the plant, and it's called homogenizing, and it won't come back out. So those are the 3 primary reasons you lose oil in distillation on this part, plus 4, scorching it, burning it, making it a throwaway. So the distillation, as I've said for years, is more of an art than a science. And I've spent 20 years of developing the new system that just got installed this past season that I'll show you downstairs. But it's a challenge. And then when it breaks at the top, we have 2 terms that we use in distillation. Actually, several, 2 in this part of it is called the break and the passover. And that's not Easter Sunday. So the break is when the steam breaks the crown of the plant material in the chamber, and Passover is when the oil comes through the condenser to the separator. So those are the things we want. When we get to break, and if you're here and you're working in the distillery and you hear the operator say, it broke, what broke? And you start looking for a break in a pipe or something. But that means that the steam has broke here, and when it breaks, there's always that first burst of gas, vapor, because it hasn't condensed yet. And you just get a big burst of aroma through the distillery from that break, and that's how you know that the steam broke the crown. And it only lasts for about 60 seconds, and then it hits this swan neck, starts the condensing process, and then, it's now gone from the gas phase to the liquid phase as it travels through the swan neck. Once it makes the migration through the swan neck into the condenser, then the temperature starts to change. When the condensate, as it starts becoming and going through the phase change from gas to back to liquid, in the swan neck, when it hits the top of the condenser, it'll still be around 200, 220 degrees. The water coming in the bottom of the condenser is coming in at 45 to 48 degrees. So it has to migrate up through those, around the tubes. There's 270 tubes in those condensers. And the water goes around the outside, and the condensate goes through the small tubes. They're 9/16 OD diameter. As it travels down, the steam is going down, the water's coming up, so there's a gradual phase change with the temperature. That has to be very specific, because if it's not, and the temperature of the water hits the steam too fast, we call that shocking the condensate. When it does that, it will actually fracture the molecule membrane. And so it will change the structure of the molecule. It will change the fragrance, particularly in the ketones. And so you can be distilling lavender, and you can have one batch that smell absolutely perfect and the way it's supposed to. And then the next batch it's off a little bit. Well, what happened? Because the temperature in the condenser changed too fast. They pushed the temperature too quickly, they pushed the water volume too fast, instead of letting it go in slow so it can go in and warm gradually. Once the cold water has made the transition all the way from the bottom of the condenser to the top of the condenser, and the steam has made the transition from the top all the way through, then it equalizes the temperature, stays in at about a consistent. And as you read Mary's book, because I gave her all these numbers, we distill and condense at different temperatures for different plants. Lavender, we condense at 80 degrees. With Melissa, we condense at 110 degrees. With balsam, spruce, and pine, we condense at 90 degrees. So many of the plants will condense the same. Lavender, hyssop, clary sage will condense all around 80 to 85 degrees. So some will vary, some will be similar. So it's a big variation. But you can destroy the oil right here in the extraction chamber before you ever get it in the condenser. Then you can destroy it in the condenser. Then we go to the separator. So that's all the different phases up here. So as you're here today, they're going to open and load, correct? They're going to load these today. They're loaded now. They're running.
The third one and the fourth one are both running together.
Oh, they're running right now. Oh, I should go over and put my hand on it. You can put your hand just real gently and you'll feel it. Yeah. Okay, so don't put your hand down or leave the last time. You're doing on the outside. Yeah. No. We've closed this off, and not because we don't want you to see it, but now that it's turned cold, when we're cooking, we have to keep the lid off from here, or it'll condense right inside the chamber, because they're not insulated. So that's why this is all closed off here. But in the other room, if it wasn't closed off, I would show you one of my first chambers I built in '96. It's in there. 4,500 liter vat. And the changes when I went from the dome lid to the cone lid. And the reason why is because when I was working in France and in Egypt and learning distillation, all the ancient distilleries all had cone lids. And yet all the modern distilleries had dome lids. And when I built my first distillery in St. Mary's, and I built the first one here, I built the dome lid. And in fact, the one to the left there, you can see the flat lid top. That was the third distillery I built in St. Mary's in 1993. And the metal one was the second one I built in 1992. But, so I was following the pattern of the distilleries in France and Egypt and built dome lids. But I just kept thinking, why did the ancient people build the cone lids when it was so much harder than making a flat or a dome lid? And there's got to be a reason for it. And so when I was back in France for the harvest, I asked Marcel one day, I said, how come it went from the cone lids to the dome lids? He said, well, Gary, with the cone lids, this one that came out of the top, there's just so much work to unhook them and take them off so you can open the lid, and then you put them back and you unhook. He said, so we went to the flat lids, so we don't have to take the swan neck off, because the swan neck came out below the lid. And if you go and look at the distilleries over there, you can see them that way. So I thought, well, there's got to be a reason. So I thought, how am I going to find out what a 100-year-old reason was? So I came down to the farm and got to thinking about it and decided I've got to find out what the steam does inside. So I put my coveralls on, I soaked myself with water, I took my flashlight, and I climbed down in the cooker. And I told my guys, I had a little hammer with me, so I could tap on the wall. And I said, okay, close the lid, and when I tap on it, turn the steam on, so I could watch the steam and see what it's doing. And
oh my word.
so they turned it on until, I'd watch it, and it just took a few seconds, and it was just involved. And then I'd tap on it, and they'd turn it off. And then they'd open the lid so I could breathe, and then when the steam cleared, I'd have to close it, and I'd do it again so I could keep watching what the steam was doing. And it was the third time they closed the lid, and steam was just flooding out of the back of the swan neck, and Mary was up in the office. And she came down looking for me.
Oh, he's inside.
And she came walking on the apron down, and she said, have you seen Gary? Uh-huh. Well, where is he? And she said, no, seriously, where's Gary? And the steam was just pouring out of the back. And I was tapping on the side of the wall, and they were talking to Mary. And she started screaming. Oh, that was a riot for a minute. They thought that I'd climb down in to clean it, and they closed the lid on purpose. Anyway, what I discovered doing that is the steam would go up, and it would hit the dome, and then it would do this, and it would fall back down in the chamber, and then it would roll back up and fall back down. And this is crazy. All I'm doing is I'm releasing the oil, and then it's falling back into the plant material. I'm releasing it, and it's falling back into the plant material. So I built the first cone lid, and we do all of it right here in our fab shop. Everything here is done right there. And I went up and I designed it, and we built the lid. It took 2 days, brought it down, put it on, and I didn't bring Mary back to the farm. I left her home. And so I crawled back into the vat again, tapped on the wall, they turned the steam on. Oh, the thing I didn't mention, I had a garden hose sticking through the swan neck with a drip of a little water on me. It didn't make much difference. But anyway, so I climbed back in, we closed it down, turned the steam on. The steam came up, it hit that cone lid, and it started going up, and then it started going around it like this. Just like a reverse corkscrew. I went right up and right out the swan neck. And after we started distilling, and then we started pulling tests, I didn't have GC then, so I sent them to Dr. Casaville to analyze for me. And we were capturing up to 18% of the fine molecules were being completely lost before. So all of this got changed out except the one that we leave it for, explaining the difference and what we do that's different. And so it's really a beautiful improvement, a beautiful operation. And I built 12 distilleries now, and the one I just finished in France was different. The one in Croatia was different. Every time I build a distillery, I see later something that I could do that would be just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. We just keep improving and improving, and then I come back and then I start adjusting our old distilleries to meet the new improvements and new designs that we've done in our new distilleries. And so in Fort Nelson, I made a huge, huge discovery up there by installing a steam pressure regulator. And it was very expensive, but it goes right on the bottom of the chamber where the steam comes in, and it takes 125 pounds of steam and reduces it to 5 pounds without reducing the temperature. And I can open the valve and engorge the entire chamber with steam now and get more saturation because I got more steam volume, more cubic meter of steam moving through the plant material than I had before. Well, because I did that before Nelson, but what I did is I put a big steam regulator on each cooker, and they were $3,800 a valve. So I looked at it when I built Croatia this summer, and I thought, what if I did this, but I did it on the boiler instead of the chambers? Why did I think of that before Nelson? Maybe because it was 40 below. My brain was frozen. Anyway, so I built a whole new system on the boiler in Croatia this summer, to where the steam, as soon as it comes out, it's all converted right there, and the pressure is reduced out of it. It's quite an apparatus. And so now we only have one reduction system instead of 5. And this made it that much more efficient, that much better. So, it's always just a path of learning. It's where you were at when you first signed up to the sugar versus where you're at today at the silver on your way to Royal Crown Diamond. It's not the same, is it? Every day you're thinking, God, why didn't I do that last year? Why didn't I do that last month? Right? And that's what makes life so full and so rewarding, because it's always learning. I go to bed at night and I go to sleep, and if I turn over, I wake up. And I get frustrated at times. I wake up and I start thinking about all those things. And so I used to always keep a notepad on my nightstand beside my bed or on my headboard. So when I wake up, I make notes. And I found out it created a bad habit, because I started waking up 2 and 3 times a night just so I could write notes. And I finally had to quit it, and yet the habit didn't quit. And I still wake up, and now I get up and I go and get my notebook and I sit down. But it's just so fun to always be creating and then watching the outcome. And you're all seeing that in your business individually. You maybe add to your web page or a new design, your Facebook, or however you're communicating. It's all the same. And it just makes it so much fun. You discover something and you can't wait to tell your people in your organization. That's what makes life fun. Okay, we'll walk downstairs and take you to the next step. You reach this status, this platform is launching you to the next level. The excitement that you feel every day. And when you think back, some of you probably work a 9-to-5 job, and when you first took that job, you're real excited about it. And then after a few weeks or a few months into the job, kind of lost its flair and flavor, and it became a J-O-B. Anybody have that experience? But as a silver, I'm willing to bet money that every one of you wake up in the morning and you're so excited you can't stay in bed. Is that right? And your mind is just spinning with all the things that you can do, and it just charges you. And probably, maybe even the person that you share your home with might say, "Golly, can we just get a normal life?" Well, what is normal, for heaven's sake? You know, I think what we have is normal. The other life is abnormal. We're supposed to be excited about life. We're supposed to be excited about what we do. We're supposed to be happy with what we do and not be, I gotta get up and go to work again. And the whole time you're sitting at work, you're, you know? And for me, I'm the opposite. I'm looking at my clock and holy cow, the day's over already? But it is. And if I get bored in the distillery, all I have to do is just go out in the field. And if I get bored out in the field, all I have to do is go to the lab. If I get bored in the lab, then I go work with Rex making formulas. You know, and if I get bored of that, then I go put the saddle on the horse. You know, every part of my life is ecstasy. It's just, you know, so exciting, and the only problem that I have is I can't get enough done in one day. And I keep telling Mary, I said, you've got to petition God and have him make the days longer and give me a 10-day week instead of a 7-day week. You know, 40 days a month instead of 30. But anyway, it's wonderful to be excited. But now that we've got everybody down here, some of you have met Rex Kidman, who works in the lab. He's been with me 21 years, going on 47. He asked about retirement, and I said, well, talk to Moses. Alyssa, she works in the R&D, product development. She loves the world. She teaches raindrops. She travels a lot for the company. Works really close with Rex and his team. Just a joy to have. You know, there's another gentleman that was upstairs a few minutes ago. Richard Woodford. Always show upstairs. Richard is head of our R&D department. We spoke with Richard, and he's just an absolute blessing to be with. This is Brett Packer. He's had the privilege of working on 3 of the farms. In fact, I took him to Ecuador with me when we started in Ecuador 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And then he came back, and we worked at the St. Mary's farm for years. And then to Highland, we worked in the warehouse up there for several years. And now he's the manager of the Highland farm. So it's just, and there's something in the air. But Rex's mother is Tamara Packer, who is our raindrop coach and instructor and the only international instructor that I certified. And she's been with me for, I think, 15 years or about that. She worked in my clinic that I had in Springfield before I went to Ecuador, and then she came to Ecuador and worked in Ecuador for 6 years, and then came back, and now she's a traveling instructor for Young Living. And anyway, Pamela is my cousin. So we've been very close since we were little kids, and we had a lot of commonality, we liked the same things, we dislike some of the same things, and it was really interesting because I was kind of the black sheep in the family, and she was kind of the black sheep in her family. So we just kind of, as kids, we just kind of shared our opinions about what we thought. But Brett has been like my son, and it's been a real joy to have him with me. And this is Hector, and he's just another one of our good support crew on our farm. And Hector, thanks for being here. You've been with us how long now? 2 years, going on 57. So, yeah, 58. So in Young Living, we don't have a retirement program because it doesn't exist in the Bible, and nobody gets old. So, yeah. So I just, I feel that I'm one of the most blessed people in the world because I have a wonderful life. It's a tad bit busy sometimes. I've built 4 distilleries in the last 2 years, Fort Nelson, Highland, Croatia, and France, and they're all running successful. The sad part that I have is when I build a distillery, I want to stay there, and I want to operate it, and I love it, and I love every one of them, and I can't do it. I can't be there all the time, and that's the sad part. I have to leave and go to the next project. And it was a challenge. And Ecuador was very special because we carved that out of the wilderness, out of the jungle. There wasn't even a road, there was nothing. And as I shared yesterday, Mary stood on the little clearing and looked out and said, "Where are you going to farm?" Everybody knew that Gary'd been in the rain too much or the sun too much and had worked me. And anyway, now it's a South American paradise. It's a one-stop destination for South America. And it's very rewarding and very exciting to be able to do these things and have these accomplishments. And folks, come on and move on around this way. We got more folks descending. Most people want to ascend, but here we enjoy descending. And these 2 chambers are distilling juniper, that's the oil that you see here. And I know I'm going to answer the questions before you ask them. And say, well, how come that one's darker and this one's lighter? And it's because this one is lighter and that one's darker. So what makes the difference in the color? Well, it depends on the material going in the chamber. So this one has more green in it, and this one has more brown in it, meaning it has a little more hardwood, this has a little more needlewood. So the more hardwood that might be in a batch, particular batch, will produce a little change in the color. Another thing that will change colors because every oil has its own signature. And when I mean signature, I mean fragrance and color. And so each one will have its own signature. One will be a pale green, one will be a little darker green. Blue spruce will be a light pink or a dark champagne. And so every oil has its own signature that makes it very special. So knowing that and knowing that we can take this out, load that chamber, distill it again, and the color will be different. The molecule will be almost exactly the same. But even at each distillation, the molecules will vary a little bit because you got different parts of the wood in every distillation. We go and we harvest lather, and we bring the lather in and load the chambers, and we'll have variations in the lather. And people say, well, isn't the lather all the same? No, because you've got different lather plants that grow at different maturity. It's just like you're a little shorter, you're a little taller, you're a little in between, you're really tall, you're even taller. And plants are just like we people. Every human being has its own identity, and has its own personality, and so do all the plants. So their blood carries that genetic coding and that imprinting that will create this variance and the difference in it. And that's what chemistry cannot duplicate. And that's what makes your oil so much more special and precious because we recognize that. And we treat it accordingly. But so we don't have this young man saying, well, my lavender smells different than my wife's lavender. Because he got his order in before she did, And he got his order from the batch that was filled on the 4th, and she got her batch that was filled on the 24th. I go, oh, well, I like my wife's lavender better. So in order to prevent that from happening, we take our oil and we put it after it comes off, goes in a big mixing tank, so it's all blended together. And then it creates the beautiful harmonics, so it's all the same. And it's just really fun. Now another thing that you've noticed, when our plant material enters that chamber right there, until it enters your bottle that comes to your door, it touches nothing but stainless steel and glass. No other company in the world can brag or boast that. So it's very special. So that's why you see the variations in color from one condenser. You can have all of the condensers turned on, and you'll see the same color, but you're still in the same plant with variations in the color. That's one thing. So I talked all of you about the condensing system, and here you can see it coming out of the tube. This here system was a 10-year dream, a 5-year project, and 2 years in the development. And this is the only one that we have now, and we have one item that is completely computerized. And the reason that I started doing this is now, in 2016, we'll be computerizing all the distilleries through Young Living. It will take more than 1 year to do it all, but the project starts next year. It will take us 2 years to get this perfected to where it's working. And so you see all the different controls there and sensors, and over there, the controls and the sensors on the chambers. And that's so it can identify the temperature and the pressure. And then it sends a signal to the valve so it'll open or close the valve. So it regulates it. It opens and closes the water right here. So it can let more in or less, depending on. So we keep a consistency to the steam flowing in the chamber, a consistent temperature through the chamber, a consistent temperature flow through the condenser, and this way it reduces operator error. Now, it was a real challenge for me to do this and design it, lay it out, because I'm not a computer person, and I had some real good IT people that helped me with this, but I had to bring in 2 engineers from outside, because it's never been done before, ever. You're seeing, well actually, Highland, we did the first one in Highland, and we started our prototype and our design, our testing, and this became our final completed automated system here in Utah, because we got Stanley sending guys all the way to northern Idaho every week to change something. So we stayed, we worked here until we got this perfected, and now we're going back. And those of you that come to the Balsam Harvest this winter, and by the way, who signed up to come? Nobody? I'm going to be all alone.
It's not open. It's not open yet.
It's not open yet? Well, be watching, because it should have been open by now, so I'll find out. But it starts January, the first Monday in January, goes through to March. This year we may extend it further because we had more people on to come last year than we had time for. So anyway, that'll be happening. But this year you'll see the same thing when you come there for the harvest. It's a fully automated system. So we put the glass bottoms on so you can see the operation of the condensing system. It's kind of fun. And so this is it. The separator temperature, as I mentioned, has to be maintained. And that's what this sensor is here. It sends a signal here to regulate the water again. So we keep a consistent temperature in the separator. So if this got too hot with juniper, the juniper would emulsify. If it got too cold, it wouldn't separate. So there's 6 stages, actually, 6 stages through the distillation where you can lose the oil. So it's really, really critical watching it. As I mentioned, Brett has been with me for, I think, 15 years. And it takes a good 5 years to train a distillery operator. This is more technical and more difficult than being a surgeon. Because a surgeon, you can bury your mistakes. And here you make a mistake and you can smell it all over the farm. So it is. It's really critical. And the theme with a good distillery operator is learning to listen. Learning to listen. And that's the key. And so when the people work in the distillery, they don't get to wear earphones and listen to iPads and iPods and rock music. They're here to listen to the new sound. Because you can hear the hissing. As the steam goes through those chambers at different stages, you'll hear the pitches change, and I call it notes. And it's just like listening to music from... I don't play a piano, but I can play that. Everybody wants to get to heaven, and so they come down here. Any questions? Yes.
So do you have to clean all of these pipes between different batches of different materials all the way down?
Yes, we do. We have little people with little brushes. The cleaning process is a 2-day process, the cleaning batches. So we first start out steaming it really good, and then we load the chambers full of water, well, not full, but about 2 feet of water, and then we dump in soap. Can you imagine soap? Just soap. We dump in a bucket of soap and turn the steam on and just soak it through the whole system. Because the soap naturally emulsifies the oil molecules. So the soap cleans it out really, really well. And we do that for 2 to 4 hours, depending on the plant material is in it. If it's lavender, 2 hours. If it's peppermint, 4 hours. If it's candy, 6 hours. And the reason why is because the penetrating of the ketones of different plants is so much denser. Like candy, if you ever put candy on your skin, 4 days later, you'll still have it. You know, lavender you put on your skin in 2 hours, it's gone. It's much more fragile. So the density of the ketones in the plant will determine the length of time you spend with the soap going through it with steam. And when that's finished, then that's all drained off, and then we go through a rinse cycle, just like you do with your laundry. And we go through a rinse cycle for 2 to 4 hours, depending again. And then the water is taken out, and then it's steamed up for 6 hours. There's nothing but pure steam comes through it. And if there's any questions sometimes, then we'll put a little of the plant material in the filter that we're going to distill next, and put that through it, if you have any questions. And then we analyze to see if there's any molecules, and then it's ready to go. So it's a big process. That's why here we have so many chambers, because it's timely and it's costly. So these here are designated strictly for lavender and juniper, so they only get changed once a year. The rest of them all vary between peppermint, chamomile, fairy sage, hyssop. Actually, we still hyssop for these two, but it just depends on, what's happening. It's a big job. Next question. Okay, I'll let you go. Thank you.